beautiful day today, isn't it? It's like spring finally got here. Wow. It's easy to say on days like this. Everything is just great. It's going to be a beautiful day. Actually, that's the kind of attitude we should have every day, regardless of what the weather is. So I have a question for you to think about. Is it possible that God is good
all the time?
Only some of the times?
Curveball.
Is it possible that God is good only occasionally? No, the essence of spirit is good all the time. So God is good?
All the time.
Thank
all
you.
The time.
Remember that. We'll be using it a little bit. You see, the universe, the nature of the universe is that it is not some specific good. It is all of the good. It is the essence of good. It is not some specific relationship. And those of you guys in the spiritual economics course will recognize this bit. It is not some specific relationship. It is the allness of love. So today's talk is called Theoptimism. And it is not a new religion. It is just an attitude. You see, that allness, that theos, that God essence, that spirit that is permeating and saturating everything is always on the positive side of life. It is always optimistic to the outcome of life itself, for it is only saying yes to its own being. And if it is the allness of good permeating and saturating everything that has come about in form, then it must be true to its own nature. It must be that good all the time in all things. So it's always optimistic. Optimism, one definition of optimism, there's a couple. One definition of optimism is confidence in the positive outcome of a situation. Now, spirit is always confident of a positive outcome in its situation, as long as we look from a high enough viewpoint. May not seem like that down here when we're mucking around in the challenges of life, but how many people have ever gone through some traumatic or difficult or challenging situation only sometime later to look back and say, wow, I'm so glad that happened because I wouldn't be here now if it hadn't. Anybody had that experience? Yeah, come on. Everybody's gone through some pain and looked back at it and turned around and said, you know, I wouldn't be living this now had that not happened. And if you haven't gotten to that place where you're looking at it and saying, I wouldn't be here now if that had not happened, I invite you to begin to change your thinking about what happened. You see, life is unfolding for us to experience good, to the level of awareness that we are willing to express that good in our life, to recognize the truth of the good that surrounds us and indwells us in each moment. It doesn't have another answer. It's always going to say yes. So it becomes incumbent upon us to figure out what it is we're having the universe say yes to. Butterworth says, we are God's living enterprise. I love this line. And God cannot fail. We are God's living enterprise. Now that has a couple of things that means to me. First of all, that God indwells me, that everything that I am is some part of this infinite God or spirit or universe or whatever you want to call it. We use God as the shorthand, for that mysterious power that comes into life that does things miraculously. It's not really miraculous, it's just the way it works. But so I'm going to use the God word as the shorthand for that as we go through this talk today. Because I like that word. I used to hate that word. It used to give me the heebie-jeebies. Because I didn't realize that God is good
all the time.
Right. I thought God was good sometimes. I thought God was sitting up there, out somewhere, picking and choosing who was getting what. And I wasn't getting enough. Because I wasn't aware of the principles of spirituality in which I will only get that which I am willing to receive. And as long as I'm willing to receive anger and bitterness and disappointment, the universe only has one answer for that. Yes! Have some more! I used to find myself saying quite frequently, I need this. You know what the universe hears? I need. Okay. Yes! Have some more need. It's one reason in practical prayer we focus on the purpose of the prayer is what we desire, not what we want to get rid of. What we desire to experience rather than getting rid of something. Because if you try to get rid of something, all you're focusing on is the thing you're trying to get rid of. And the universe says, yes.
Yes.
And so you get more of that. And you wonder why. So the spiritual truth of theoptimism is that in our mind, and this is the other part of this, we control our thinking. We have the opportunity to choose which we're thinking. Now, sometimes thoughts go through so fast we don't seem like we can control them. Anybody have a committee in their head? I have one. Occasionally, they vote me out of office. It's a terrible thing to feel like, what is my mind doing? I can't get there. But on the other hand, the truth is we have the opportunity through practice and diligence to change what we're thinking about. And so when we experience negativity in our lives, or what we choose to call negativity in our lives, it is because we have chosen to think about things that are drawing that and focusing our awareness on that into our experience. There's nobody else responsible for it. Think about this. It's a really key point. Would you really want somebody else to be responsible for your misery? You can gather a lot of it that way. However, if we're in control of who and what we are as this conscious decision point within the allness of God, we can choose how we are perceiving things. We can choose how we are choosing to express our life and experience our life. I'm going to tell you a brief little story about a good friend of mine. Some of you know him. We shall call him Dave. Because that's his name. Now, Dave is a driver for Lyft. And he had an experience which is going to exemplify theoptimism. So, as some of you know, and I'll just relay this, he bought a new car recently for his job for Lyft so that he could get the higher rate, and he's had the car for about 2 months. It's a beautiful little car. He loved it. He was getting a lot of money running around in Philadelphia, driving people around, and he was having a really great time of it. And so, just the other night, he was driving it around 1 o'clock in the morning, and I think it was 22nd and Lehigh. And he was sitting there at a stoplight, and somebody plowed into him at about 35 miles an hour. Now, Dave is fine. It's perfectly okay. Nothing done. And so the guy leans out his window and says, pull over, so that they can, exchange information. He pulls over, and the guy drives off. Now, the initial response is, oh my God, that's terrible. However, Dave, in his positive attitude, and Dave is a theoptimistic. He always applies the optimism in his life where he's looking outward. And so he looked around, and it just so happened where this happened that he was sitting on the corner, and right on the corner, who had witnessed this incident, was a tow truck. Wow. So guy in the tow truck came out, said, okay, saw what happened, saw the kind of car it was. I can give you I work for all the major insurance companies in the city. I can, give you a tow to wherever you need to go. And so not only that, he offered to do this for free because he had just seen this hit and run incident. And because Dave was an optimistic character. Now, instead of being all upset and saying, oh no, God has chosen me for some terrible event that I have to slog through to trudge to my happy destiny at some point, right? He said, wow, I'm okay with this. Nobody was hurt, started thinking about it, and he called his insurance company. This car is brand new. He hadn't even made a payment on it yet. Okay? First payment was due yesterday. He called his insurance company, and he called and said, I've just been in an accident. Here's a picture of the car. It looks like it's totaled to me. It's a unibody construction. And they said, yeah, you're probably right. It'll take a little while to work out the paperwork. And he said, I'm not sending you any money. And they said, okay. Gotta love this optimism stuff, right? Turns around, and not on top of that, they say, oh yeah, and we'll have a rental car for you until your new car is ready. See, when we focus on the optimistic avenue of life, when we look at the higher level of this and say, okay, this could be bad or it could be good, and we choose good, we can find the good in what's happening, focus our intention on the positive, and know that this is all going to work out for the best. The other part of this was Dave has 2 cars, the one he replaced, and he was going to give that to a friend. And his plan was to drive up to Boston today to give this car to a friend and then fly home, to his new car waiting to go back to work. So it turns out that he texted me this morning to say, on my way to Boston, got the flight back, the car will be ready to pick up when I'm back. When we can put ourselves into a positive frame of mind, align ourselves with the understanding that God is always good, and bringing forward the positive aspect of life when we choose to recognize it, then any situation that we are living through can become an opportunity for us to become that inlet that becomes an outlet of the good that surrounds us. But there's some rules to this game, this theoptimism. We have a dogma, you might want to say, in theoptimism, that you, being responsible for the experience of your life, you being the master of your ship, are the author of your experience, have the responsibility to choose where you are being. Have you ever noticed some negative conversation going on around you? Ever? No. I heard some this morning here. And it's not hugely negative stuff. It's not like a challenging situation. But what I noticed was I was listening, and I was listening to the attitude of the conversation as it was going on. And it's so easy to fall into something outside of me is bad. We have a political situation going on right now. People have a lot of opinions about this. A lot of people have a lot of opinions about this. Is it good? Is it bad? I don't know. Which do you choose? I choose to stay with the optimism and say that there is a power and presence for good in everything, absolutely everything, unfolding exactly as we choose it to unfold. And in the end, it will all be all right, whatever the outcome. You see, at the heart of it, there is this thing that we have that we need to be, let me rephrase that. Catch that? See how easy it is to fall in to these ideas of lack and limitation in our verbalization, in our thinking. Let me rephrase that to say, if we would like to experience good in our life, it is our responsibility to clean up our thinking. It is our responsibility to choose the thoughts that support that good in our life. And to consistently choose those thoughts that support that good in our lives. And therein lies the rub, is to consistently choose those thoughts which support the good in our lives. Is this easy? No. I've never found it easy, and I've been doing this for a while. I have a mind that is inundated by all that comes around me, all the negativity that you hear in the world today. Start with the news and the internet, the water cooler conversation in which people are talking about it's them, they did it, it's a terrible situation, ad infinitum. We hear this and we're inundated with it. So it is not easy to say, no, life is good. And I am good and I am experiencing good in all situations. Emma Curtis Hopkins, and my friend Bill says this often, and I'm going to repeat it. He'll look at me if I get it wrong. Says this, and I love this. This too is God. This too is good. This too is God. This too is for me now. And I demand to see the blessing in it. That's the attitude we need to generate if we choose to experience theoptimism in our life. That's the attitude that we need to stick to in the midst of negativity going on around us, and recognize in all cases, that we are the author of our experience. That we have the opportunity to shift the experience that we are having by shifting the thinking that we are living with. And so as we get into this theoptimism, which is really the confidence that this thing we call God is good all the time, and that the outcome of this too will be good because we are an individual expression of God, God's living enterprise here, that we need to bring our thinking to a higher level, to move to the highest level of thought that we can achieve in any given moment, and bring that into our experience. As my friend, the theoptimistic Dave, does. Where something could be, I could see a whole lot of places in that little story where I could say, nope, this is not good. You know? Instead, he stayed at the high level of thinking. This is all unfolding perfectly. It's all happening for a reason, and the reason is good. And good came of it. And we can do that too. The other thing I'd like to leave you with as you go about your week is a little challenge. So as you move towards becoming a theoptimistic, when you find yourself in those situations where you have negativity going on around you, where people blame, shame, whatever the situation is, just negative talk going on around you, make a stand. Say something positive. Take the opportunity to find the silver lining in whatever situation is going on, and become a theoptimistic and express that. And this is how the world changes. Because you can. In each moment we can. We can bring ourselves to a better understanding of the good that's surrounding us, that indwells us, and indwells whatever we see. And maybe that stand that you take to say something positive is what changes the world. I'm optimistic about that. Namaste.
Namaste.